Honestly, I'm kind of speechless at what's been going on the past week or so in this country. It's sad. It really is. It's one of the darkest times in American history, and I don't say that lightly. And what I'm talking about is not necessarily the riots in Washington, D.C., as terrible and horrific as they were. It's the response that we've seen in the aftermath of those riots, that really has me concerned about the future of this country. That so many people are applauding censorship by these big tech companies. And it's because, of course, they don't like Donald Trump, so of course they're going to be happy with Trump getting censored and Trump's accounts getting taken down. But it's not even like, it's not just Donald Trump that is getting taken down. It's a lot of people with conservative views that are getting deplatformed, that are getting banned from Twitter, from Facebook, and all these other major social media platforms. And of course, this is a direct response to Donald Trump allegedly inciting an insurrection. Although I made a video last time talking about why these new impeachment charges are bullshit and why Trump deserves nothing more than a full and total acquittal, as he was acquitted during the last trial. I don't even know if this impeachment trial can even go through when by the time it gets to the Senate, he's going to already be gone. His term will expire. But anyway, regardless of the impeachment, the response that people have had, especially directly towards Donald Trump, he deserves to get deplatformed. He deserves to get impeached. He deserves to never be allowed to run for office ever again because he incited a violent riot. I find that hilarious because just because the pure hypocrisy from the left on this issue. I'm actually going to pull you the direct quote that Donald Trump said the day of the riots, before it actually turned into a riot last Wednesday. So here's what Donald Trump wrote on Twitter. I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard. That's what Donald Trump said on January 6th, just hours before the peaceful protest became violent. But he clearly said peacefully. He didn't say, let's go march on the Capitol, let's bust the windows open, let's break into the Capitol, bust some heads, beat some politicians up, bludgeon a police officer to death with a fire extinguisher. He didn't say that at all. He didn't even insinuate that the Trump supporters that are marching to the Capitol should engage in any violence whatsoever. Yet, Trump is accused of inciting an insurrection because of his voter fraud claims. That's another thing that I also find a lot of hypocrisy in. We'll get into that a little bit later. But as far as the idea that Trump is inciting a riot, I want to read you some other quotes from other politicians from over the summer and a couple years ago during the Trump presidency. These are Democratic politicians. We have Congresswoman Nina Turner, who says there needs to be unrest in the streets. Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, protesters should not let up. And we have Nancy Pelosi, who says, I just don't know why there aren't uprisings all over the country. Maybe there will be. And this was, right around the George Floyd situation, right before we did get riots over the summer. She said, I don't know why there aren't uprisings. Maybe there will be. And my favorite quote from Maxine Waters. If you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and create a crowd and you push back on them and you tell them that they aren't welcome anymore, anywhere. Now, you, watching this video, can argue that nothing that Nina Turner, Kamala Harris, Nancy Pelosi, or Maxine Waters said incited violence. All Maxine Waters said was just go up to people in the Trump cabinet and tell them they're not welcome here anymore. She didn't say to attack them, to beat them up. Nancy Pelosi didn't say to loot businesses and to cause violence against police officers. Neither did Kamala Harris or Nina Turner or any of the other Democratic politicians that were encouraging peaceful protests during the summer. And by the way, I'm not trying to say fuck Black Lives Matter. I'm not trying to say the Black Lives Matter movement is illegitimate. I actually sympathize a lot with BLM. And I do think that the protests were mostly peaceful, in the sense that most of the people that were there did not have any intent on looting stores and burning down buildings and causing violence, even though there were a small group of people that did so. But that's the argument that the left has also been using, that you can't blame the peaceful protesters for the violence that has happened, with the riots, with the buildings burning to the ground, and everything, because those are just a small number of the large, peaceful gathering. I agree. But then, at the same time, you can't call every Trump supporter that was in Washington, D.C. a violent insurrectionist. So there's pure hypocrisy when it comes to the response to the Trump riot. And yeah, a police officer was killed, but how many police officers were killed over the years? And the left didn't have much to say about that. But the point I'm trying to say is that there's so much hypocrisy over the reaction to Donald Trump and the things that he's been saying. He got deplatformed from every social media platform, for every major social media platform: Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Snapchat, Shopify. He's got banned from everything. And he's also, these businesses, Deutsche Bank and all of these banks and corporations, they have pledged that they will refuse to do business with Donald Trump and the Trump Corporation, whatever it's called, the Trump Organization. They're not going to do business with Trump and his corporation after he leaves office because of him inciting violence. They will refuse to donate to political campaigns, specifically Republicans, that have said that the election was stolen in 2020, even though all the Democrats I mentioned, Kamala Harris, Nina Turner, Maxine Waters, Nancy Pelosi, have insinuated that the 2016 election was stolen in some way by the Russians. And it's really sad that they're still trying to overturn the 2016 election even after they won the 2020. It's like they get everything, but they're still not happy, because they want Trump to be out of the picture completely. They don't just want him to get voted out of office. They want him to be gone forever. And it's a really scary time in this country right now. We do not live in a free country. What bothers me is not necessarily the act of banning somebody from a platform because they're perceived as insinuating violence, although I do think that is kind of arbitrary and that does go against free speech. I, of course, do have a problem with that, but I think the bigger problem is how one-sided it is. Maxine Waters' Twitter account wasn't taken down. Bernie Sanders' Twitter account wasn't taken down, even though a Bernie Sanders supporter shot Steve Scalise and almost killed him several years ago. And that's not me trying to say, again, that's not me trying to say that Bernie Sanders is responsible for that. But at the same time, Donald Trump is not responsible for the riots and for the deaths that took place this past Wednesday. So there's pure hypocrisy, because it's a complete double standard, because people on the left that do the exact same thing and say the exact same things that don't even directly insinuate violence, by the way. I'm not trying to say that Maxine Waters, Bernie Sanders, or Nancy Pelosi deserve condemnation for the words that they say, but it's no different than what Trump has said. Trump actually specifically said peaceful. He said peaceful protesting. The left has said that all summer, and no one's criticized them. The social media companies didn't deplatform them. It's a coordinated effort. The fact of how coordinated this was, all the social media platforms at the same time deplatforming the president. And even a few years ago, Alex Jones, it was a coordinated effort. He was banned from every single platform. And you could say that Alex Jones is a dingbat. He's a psycho. I'd be inclined to agree with you. But censorship, the First Amendment essentially means nothing. And I love how these people on the left, all of a sudden, they're free market libertarians. They're all about the rights of the corporations when they say, whoa, they're private companies. They're allowed to do whatever they want. It's funny. But, private bakeries are not allowed to discriminate against gay people, but social media platforms are allowed to discriminate against conservatives. It's, they have no consistency. If it weren't for double standards, the left would have no standards whatsoever. And to be fair, you can say the same thing about the right, but it's been especially apparent with the left. I think the left right now is a huge threat to freedom and democracy, even though the right has done some things also. I really can't get behind this whole voter fraud thing. But the left is really no better. When they're the ones that are still trying to overturn 2016, they're still trying to remove a duly elected president from office, even as his term is days away from being over. They're still trying to do it. They're still trying to overturn the 2016 election after they won 2020. But, for so many years, people on the left have, in response to conservatives being upset with Twitter and them deplatforming conservative speakers, what did the left say in response? They said, if you don't like it, start your own website. Start your own social media platform. And that's exactly what conservatives did. They had Gab, Parler, and guess what happened? Well, they tried to shut down Gab, but Gab got back online. But now Parler is shut down completely. You cannot access Parler as we speak. You can't get on. You cannot get on Parler. So the conservatives did exactly what the left told them to create your own social media platform. And these corporations still find a way to shut them down, even as they create their own website. Amazon shut them down because the website runs on Amazon Cloud Services, and every other company that offers the same service has denied service to Parler. And the whole argument is that they're insinuating Parler needs to be shut down because it's dangerous, it's too violent, it's encouraging violence. If you actually go on Parler, it's pretty much Twitter, which is left-wing, but it's just a right-wing Twitter. That's all Parler is. And there are certain websites out there that are pretty bad. So people have been looking for Reddit alternatives because of the censorship going on there. There's a website called Vote, and I go on the homepage of Vote, and it's nothing but KKK shit. Literally, like KKK, Nazis, white supremacist shit that is fucking disgusting. But Parler is nothing like that. It's just a website that people go on because of the strict censorship policies that Twitter has, and it's not like a universal thing that they apply to everybody. It's specifically targeted against one group of people, one political ideology, and that is people who lean right, people who lean conservative, and go against the mainstream left. And that's who controls Silicon Valley. You look at the donations, 95% of Silicon Valley employees, or 95% of the Silicon Valley donations have gone to Joe Biden and the Democratic Party in the 2020 election, and the other 5% has gone to Republicans. There's a clear bias. Even as Donald Trump, as hated as the picture that they have painted Donald Trump as a terrible person, as an evil racist, as a horrible, horrible human being, worst president in United States history, even after they've been pushing that narrative for so long, he got almost 75 million votes in 2020. He got about 46% of the national vote. So, despite the amount of control they're trying to do, like they're trying to influence our elections, and that's the real election interference, not the Russia shit. It's the coordination that these social media companies are engaging in to silence the voice of at least half the country. And that's exactly what they did in the 2020 election. And that's exactly what they're doing right now. They're silencing the president of the United States. For what? For what? What did he say that even insinuated that he wanted violence in D.C.? His voter fraud claims? What about the claims that Donald Trump is an illegitimate president since the day he won the election on November 8th? It was the Russians. He only got in because of the Russians. You've heard nothing but that from Democratic politicians across the board. Yet, all the Russiagate posts never got taken down, but if you say stop the steal, your post will get taken down. It's equal. There's just as much evidence as widespread voter fraud in 2020 as there is evidence that the election was stolen from Clinton in 2016, that the Russians somehow got Donald Trump into the White House. Which means that there's no evidence for each of those things, but you get what I'm trying to say. We do not live in a free country because although the government, the First Amendment only talks about the government not being able to censor, the spirit of the First Amendment, the spirit of free speech, is definitely in serious jeopardy right now when Twitter and Facebook has become so ingrained in our society, in our culture, that when they engage in this type of behavior that is clearly biased towards one political ideology over the other, even if you apply the same standards about, oh, Trump said something that insinuated that he wanted violence, meanwhile Democratic politicians have used the exact same language in regards to peacefully protesting, peacefully marching. Donald Trump never said, let's be violent. Neither did, like I said, neither did Maxine Waters, neither did Bernie Sanders, but it's the same thing. They've used the exact same language. But only one side gets taken down. Only one side, one side is held to a much higher standard than the other. And they're trying to influence public discourse to a way that is very detrimental to democracy. The same people on the left that talk about how Republicans are a huge threat to democracy right now are applauding these social media companies for their censorship. It's insane. It really is insane. And don't think that they won't eventually come for you. Yeah, obviously right now the social media companies are with you in the sense that they hate Donald Trump, they hate Republicans, but keep in mind that if you're further to the left than the mainstream left, you will also get censored. You will also get taken down. So it's not even just like it's mostly a right-wing issue. It's mostly people on the right, mostly people who are conservative that are getting silenced, but it's also people who are on the left that are also starting to deal with it. Not to the same level as conservatives, but don't think that they won't eventually come for you. That's what happens with authoritarianism. That's what happens when you silence the voices of people. You think, oh, it's great because these people are bad. These people are extremists. Started off with Alex Jones. Everybody thinks that Alex Jones is a fucking nut job. But then it moved on to other people, to people that weren't necessarily as extreme as him. And it got progressively worse. The censorship has gotten progressively worse and worse and worse over time. But because right now Democrats are benefiting from the censorship, it's helping their political prospects, and it's good for them. It makes it a lot easier for them to get certain things accomplished, to pass certain policies, when the other side, the opposition, is completely silenced. Social media should be considered a public utility. And some people may not like that. Maybe some libertarians watching right now may object to that point. And what I love so much is people on the left that object to that, even though for so long they've said that these private companies should not have the right to deny service to gay people. They should not have the right to tell people which bathrooms they can and cannot use. But they do have the right to tell people what they can and cannot say on social media. There's no logical consistency. It's just pure hypocrisy. And it's disgusting. Yeah, but when you look at Facebook, Twitter, and all these other websites and how big they are huge. Everybody has social media. Almost everybody. So, to get silenced to get banned from a website, seems like okay, not like a huge deal, but it really is because of how huge these platforms are and of how important social media is to spread your message across to the world, especially as a politician. Donald Trump is banned from Twitter, but the Ayatollah of Iran is still on Twitter and Facebook, and I know that because I follow him. I follow the Ayatollah on social media. Don't ask me why, I just do. He's allowed to be online, but Donald Trump is not. I don't care if you're watching this, if you're the most anti-Trump person imaginable. I mean, I guess you would say that Donald Trump is on the equal level of Adolf Hitler. So I guess talking to you wouldn't really be productive anyway. But even if you hate Trump so much, do you really think that Donald Trump should be held to a higher standard than the Ayatollah of Iran, who is responsible for the death of so many innocent people? Or how about all these other countries? You think Donald Trump is worse than Benjamin Netanyahu? Benjamin Netanyahu essentially bombed Gaza to fucking hell and killed so many innocent civilians. It's not even, doesn't even make sense. You can't even make sense of it except for the fact that they hate Donald Trump so much that they will silence him. It's scary. It really is scary what this country has become. Freedom and democracy, people on the left and the right are starting to care less and less about that. And, I've always thought this over the years, that the biggest threat to our freedoms, to our civil liberties, it's not the government. Although, they will happily take your rights away if they have the opportunity to do so. But they're only given that opportunity when the people allow it to happen. That's the case with the Second Amendment. That's something I feel really strongly about how gun control is just a terrible thing. And it will lead, it really sets the way for the government to eventually have free reign and be as undemocratic and as authoritarian as they want, because you can't defend yourself against them. I think gun control is a terrible thing. It's a huge threat to freedom and liberty, as is censorship by these corporations. And all the companies that are refusing to do business with Trump, are they doing business with China? Does Deutsche Bank trade with China? Do they trade with do they have any relationship with the Chinese Communist Party? I would bet that they do. So they're not going to do business with Trump, but they're going to do business with a country that has literal concentration camps with leaders that engage in severe human rights abuses. I mean, I've been spending 22 and a half minutes talking about the pure hypocrisy. And I don't understand how people can get behind this, even if you hate Trump, even if you hate conservatives. You're not going to... You censoring people is not going to get rid of those ideas. You're just going to isolate people further. You're going to make people further divided, because eventually Parler will go back online, one way or the other. And instead of us having a dialogue, engaging in civil discourse, even, as intense as it can get, it's never a comfortable thing to have, rigorous, to have a vigorous political debate. But it's a necessary thing. In order for us to live in a free society, we need to engage with each other, even if we strongly disagree. But, with the censorship on Twitter, Facebook, and all these other platforms, the right is seeking alternatives. You have Parler, Gab. There's another website, Minds.com, which is essentially like a Facebook alt tech. So the conservatives are just going to different websites and aren't even getting exposed to different views at all. So even if you're on the left and you don't like conservatives, you don't like what they have to say, to completely isolate them to other websites, to other platforms, so that we're pretty much in our own echo chambers, is that really good for democracy? Is that good for the spirit of democracy? I think not. So, I think right now America cannot be considered to be a free country because of the influence that these corporations have over what we say and what we think. They're very influential. And the fact is that, even though conservatives will start flocking over to these alternate platforms, they don't have nearly as much of a reach as Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, etc. So it's a huge problem. It's really scary. It really is. And anybody who supports this shit, you're a fraud. If you say that, Donald Trump is a huge threat to democracy, the voter fraud people, the people going against the certification of the election, there's so much against the democracy, but you support this, you're a fraud, and you're full of shit. That's all I have to say.